All right, for those of you joining in over on YouTube, getting ready to go live once again here on the Tiki Talk. Already talked to TJ. He's our mod. Was a guest on my live yesterday. He's going to be in. We're going to see what happens. Got a few things to talk about. We got FBI Director Christopher Wray resigning. We've got Donald Trump not knowing what birthright citizenship is. We got a lot of things to talk about today. For those of you joining in, we are going to be talking news and politics, like I do every night that I go live. I see some familiar names out there already, which is cool. I know TJ. There's TJ. I was just going to say I know TJ is going to be along at any minute. And sure enough, there he pops in, our great mod. TikTok Rocker Girl says, good evening. Good evening to you. Glad to be here. Hope you guys get something out of this. Got a few things we can talk about. We've got FBI Director Christopher Wray resigning. That's kind of interesting. JD says, good to see you. Nice to see you too. Marcia says, hello. TJ says I'm like herpes. I never go away. TJ's always got something funny to say. I'll admit that. But we've got FBI Director Christopher Wray saying today he's going to resign. And that's interesting. It's not unexpected. He's resigning on his own terms. Donald Trump had planned to fire Christopher Wray in as soon as Donald Trump was going to be president. So Christopher Wray is not going to give him the pleasure of doing that. Marcia coming in with gifts. I appreciate that. But yeah, Christopher Wray resigning. We've got that. We've got 29 Republicans have asked Donald Trump to get rid of something that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. That is the ability to free direct file with the IRS for your taxes. Now, this would be like, instead of going to H&R Block, you would just file with the IRS and eliminate the IRS. Well, or eliminate the middleman in that process. And they're asking Donald Trump to do away with it. They're calling it government overreach. They're calling it government weaponization. And they're saying, well, the IRS shouldn't be the one to decide who pays your tax or how much you pay in taxes. Well, here's the thing with that. Doesn't matter who you go through to file your taxes. If you screw it up, the IRS is going to look into it, and while they may approve you initially, if they choose to audit you and they find out you screwed up and you owe them more money or that they overpaid you in a refund, they're going to go after you. They're going to come back and they're going to get the money that they overpaid you or that they say you owe. That's already a thing. So this is just eliminating a place like H&R Block or any of those places out of the equation, and you're just filing directly with the IRS, and it actually makes it quicker for people because now you don't have to wait for you're already with the IRS. It's a simpler process. But they want to do away with it with a whole bunch of bogus reasons. I think it has a lot to do with the lobby from places like TurboTax and H&R Block, because they want to make money off of preparing your taxes. Same thing with Marcia says, and they can go back from when they notice your mess. Oh yeah, they can easily go back. They go back and they if they don't find it for 3 years, they'll still come after you. TJ said, I said that on your video. Yeah, I think you did. I think I saw that. That you were saying it's about the lobby and it's about the money. I think maybe that's where I even got the idea. Because I think initially I was like, man, they just don't know how. Like they should know how taxes work and how this stuff works. And I was pissed off that they were trying to say it was something else, but that's typical Republicans. They don't know how anything works, even the ones that are in government. One thing I'm noticing out of Trumpers and MAGAs, TJ says, big money, big influence. That's super PAC. Yeah, basically. And they say, hey, we'll keep donating to your campaigns, but you got to do us a solid on the backside. That's how they all operate. One thing I'm noticing from a lot of Trumpers, even the ones that, let's see, Marcia says, not me, but my father, older, would make little mistakes being older and it was found a few years. Yeah. And if they think they overpaid you, they will come back after it, plus penalties and interest. Oh, yeah. And heaven forbid they think you did it on purpose. They will really go after you if they think it was on purpose. One of the things I've been noticing, some comments left in my videos and stuff when I see Trump humpers actually find my content, is these MAGAs, they believe the people that are in government actually have an idea of how government works. So when Donald Trump says something egregious like, for birthright citizenship, you just have to have one foot in the country and you get birthright citizenship, they think he knows what he's talking about because he was president. They automatically assume that the people in those positions have knowledge about what they're talking about. Marcia says, my mom too, and it was just having it in the wrong box placement. That was all minor things. Yeah, but if that changes how your taxes come out and how they calculate it, they like to go after you. The IRS does. They want their money. And that was one of the things Joe Biden was looking to shore up with more money to the IRS, was allowing them to go after the bigger tax cheats, the people that owe millions of dollars, that are holding out on their back taxes, things like that. But they want to do away with a bunch of that money. TJ says, are you going to accidentally request me again? No idea. There's an entire possibility that could happen. Why do Trumpers think leftists want us to be like Cuba? Because they don't understand how anything works. They really don't. They have been taught from, kids, communism bad, socialism bad, and it's buzzwords. The simple fact is certain things are inherently socialist. And we do them all the time when people don't think twice about it. For example, your local fire department. That is a socialist program. You pay your property taxes, you pay your city sales tax, whatever. And then when there's a fire, the fire department shows up, puts out the fire. Drive on the roads. Yeah. You pay your road taxes or whatever. Same thing. We pay our taxes for those things and for those services, and we get them back. That is a socialist idea. What would be capitalist is if you called a private company to come put out the fire, and they charged you a fee to put out your fire. Or said, hey, we're here. Here's $10,000 bill, payment due up front. Having the government fund certain things makes sense. Not all socialism is bad. But they were always taught from a very young age, the Trumpers are, that this buzzword of socialism is bad. They were never explained what it is. Same with communism. They don't understand what those words are. They just associate them with bad. That's why they keep calling Kamala Harris a communist. People like Hillary Clinton a communist. Joe Biden. All of it. Because they don't understand. They don't know. They don't think critically. They don't think past the end of their nose or look past the end of their nose. They just know buzzwords. They just know bits and pieces. But then they also put a lot of weight for certain people who are in key positions to because they're in those positions, they think because they say something, they automatically know what they're talking about. Lori says there's no logic. With Trumpers and MAGA, no, there's not. These are the people that struggled to get through high school in a lot of cases. There was a kid that I graduated with, and I haven't talked to him since graduation. Actually, I take that back. I didn't graduate with him because he was supposed to graduate with me, but he couldn't because he hadn't passed as a senior, taking it all 4 years, freshman social studies. But I hadn't talked to him since graduation. I don't know if he's a Trumper, but when I think of Trumpers and MAGA, he's the kind of person I think of, the person who just didn't pass classes in high school and struggled mostly from their own bad choices. X-File says, do you like conspiracy videos? Depends on the conspiracy. I've seen some conspiracy theories that sound plausible. I think some are completely out there and nuts. Marsha says, do you think they will cut down on welfare? I've never noticed the times when I got welfare off and on. I think they may try. But with this Congress, I don't know how much support there's going to be, even within the Republican Party, to do it. There's always been a push, going back to Reagan, to cut back on slashing government assistance, especially food programs and things like that, because they made up a story of a woman. I believe it was meant to be a woman of color. I don't remember. But a woman who was a single mom and supposedly living high on the hog with welfare, food stamps, things like that. They made the whole story up about how well they actually live, but those kind of stories started circulating, and a lot of the Trumpers believe it, that people on assistance end up eating better than everybody else who pays for their groceries. And it's just not true. I did the math a while back. Well, I don't know what it is now. I knew somebody who was getting food assistance here in Iowa about 10 years ago. And they told me what they were getting for a family of two. And it came out to something like $10 a day to feed two people. Like, and that was at grocery prices then. Like, it was struggling to put 3 meals on the table every day with that kind of assistance. But some people believe that, they're eating so well, it's ridiculous. TJ says no one lives high on the hog on welfare. No, they don't, but Republicans have this working theory that everybody does, or they know somebody who cheated the system and got more benefit than they deserved, or maybe didn't quite deserve it and somehow gamed the system. So they think everybody's doing that. Trumpers hate billionaires but defend their wealth. Yeah, they do. They hate billionaires, but they defend their wealth in part because they believe that someday that's going to be them. That if they just work hard enough, if they try hard enough, if they catch the right break, they're going to be the billionaire and they'll reap all the benefits of what they're doing to help the billionaire class. And it's unreasonable and unrealistic, but that's how they think. I know some people in my, locally here that think that way. And I'm like, what's the most you've ever made a year? And the guy's like $30,000. I go, you could work for that every year for the rest of your life and you'll never come close to touching $1 billion. He goes, but I'm going to make that break one of these days and I'm going to get there. Marcia says they also said that when I was real young that they would have expensive cars. I wouldn't have noticed. Yeah. That's the other story, is they like to spread this, that they're driving fancy cars and they're not really, they don't need the assistance. It's all made up fantasy, but enough people believe the hype, they get into it. Molly Mose says, do you know why Elon is meeting with the new leader about cutting Social Security? Because they want to cut Social Security. They view it as an entitlement, that it's a handout to people, not that it's your hard-earned money that you worked for. They don't care about protecting the elderly when they get to be retirement age. They've even said, well, if we cut it enough, we may have to put work requirements in or something. You may have to go back, and if you can't live on where we cut your Social Security to, you may have to get a part-time job. They want to put limits on things like VA disability, like, oh, well, your VA disability payments can only go for so many years. Doesn't matter for what disability. So you lost your leg while you were in the service, but suddenly after 10 years, you're supposed to be perfectly fine and able to go out and get a regular job? And the government doesn't have an obligation to fund you anymore? No, that's not the whole point. We should be funding it better, but that's not the Republican way. TJ says red state welfare costs way more than food stamps. Oh yeah, most of the red states are taker states. If you look at what they kick into the per federal tax dollar that they kick in from their state to what they get back, I don't remember what the highest point one was, but I want to say it was something like for every dollar they sent in federal money in taxes, I want to say they got like $1.30 or $1.40 back per dollar they kick in. It's ridiculous. They the red states, they have the highest group of people on government assistance and getting the most benefit from it. But then they want to cut those programs, and their voters vote for it because they think their benefits will be fine. It'll just be the people who are cheating the system that'll be affected. They are so out of touch with reality. Illegals with $1 million cars. Yeah, they believe those weird stories because, somebody knows somebody who saw it happen one time. JD says, question is, will the Senate and House actually listen to Elon? Seems like they haven't so far. Yeah, they excuse me. They end up, they're going to buck heads because they're going to want what they want. Elon's not actually part of the government. He's outside the government. And it would take an act of Congress to create the Department of Government Oversight. They're not going to do that. They don't want to spend that kind of money. And a bunch of these cuts, the members of the House and the Senate, they know they have to go get reelected. How can they go back to their own states, their own districts, and say, look what I did for you. I know you guys, a lot of you receive benefits, but we cut your food stamps by 75%. Or whatever ridiculous number they come up with. They'd get booed out of town. It might be, if it does happen, that could be what it takes to flip a big chunk of this country back to the Democratic Party for a long time. TJ said that was Mississippi, about the getting like $1.30 or $1.40 back. I knew it was a red state. I couldn't remember which one. Tom Powell Jr. on here. He does, every now and then he's got a breakdown, and he gets really into it with all of the numbers of which states pay the most versus the least. And that's where I get a lot of my information from. Jules says, hey, Analytical and TJ, saw you live with Rational Boomer. That was great. Oh, yeah, that was awesome. That was fun. It was one of those things where I did a live, and I got up. I just planned to go watch Mike and watch the Rational Boomer. I no more logged in, and Rational Boomer's like, hey, I see Eric. Invite. And next thing I know, we did almost a 2-hour live. A little bit later, he invites TJ, and we were off to the races. It was awesome. Molly says Elon asking more like president or vice president. Um, yeah, he kind of is, but ultimately he's going to butt heads with with Donald Trump, and once Donald Trump and him clash, and he feels like Elon's taking the spotlight or stepping on his toes, he's going to kick Elon to the curb. That's how these people always are. Uh, Elon and Trump are two similar personalities. They will not mesh together perfectly for long. Um, Jewel says to TJ, "Hope you do more of the lives." And TJ says, "Tell Mike, yeah, let Mike know, let the Rational Boomer know that you enjoyed it. Whether that's an email to him, whether it's a comment, a direct message. He did post it up over on YouTube. Whether it's a comment under there, I know he likes to read them, and he takes the feedback. And if he thinks people get something out of it, he'll do more of it." Marcia says, "Why do they seriously think Biden and Joe wanted Trump to win, not Harris?" Uh, because they believe the lie that Donald Trump said about Joe Biden hating Kamala because Joe Biden was no longer the nominee. Joe Biden chose. Well, he got forced out, but he ultimately made the decision to not run. He endorsed Kamala Harris. Them saying that Joe didn't want her to win couldn't be farther from the truth. If Joe didn't want her to win, he wouldn't have shown up to some of her events and spoke. He wouldn't have endorsed her. He wouldn't have talked at the DNC. He would have come out. I don't know if he would have come out and publicly endorsed Trump, but he would have. There would have been more signs. They want to believe that that's what happened. TJ says, "You did that to me last night," talking about me just randomly inviting TJ. Well, that was actually me sliding through the comments and because it pops up here on my side, invite so and so to join your live, and I was trying to scroll around and read the comments. Next thing I know, TJ's in the box and we're both on live. JD says, "Elon and Trump are both narcissists. Two narcissists cannot exist together without a battle. They can for a little bit, but they will butt heads, and they can exist for a little bit, but not long term." TJ says, "Don't threaten me with a good time with more of the multi-guest lives." Yeah, it was fun. Rebecca says, "I would love to join one of those lives with you guys." Yeah, it was fun. TJ's like, "I clicked on it immediately." Yeah, I think I've accidentally sent a few other people invites doing it the same way I did to TJ. But nobody else ever took me up on it. TJ's like, "I get a chance to be on a live 2 days in a row?" Yeah, I'm in. Marcia says, "That gets me mad that stupid thought 1 minute Biden voted for Trump." Yeah. Um, yeah, they believe it only because they gave some weight to it because it came from Donald Trump. And they think he knows what he's talking about because he was president. They give that a lot of weight. I've seen the comments in multiple videos and stuff where I call him out about how tariffs work, about how this works, about how that works, about how this will crash the economy, or whatever. And I see, before I block them, I see the comments from Trump supporters, and they go, "Well, you think you know more than the guy who was in the office?" Yeah, I do. Because I understand how the government works. I understand what our Constitution says. TJ says they only give you 115 seconds. Oh, okay. I mean, I've seen a few people pop up here and invite me, but I haven't known who any of them are except for Mike, so I just declined. I wasn't paying attention. Marcia says, "I try to stay away from politics, but I like to mess with them today." Yeah, I know a lot of people who tried to stay out of politics, but it's going to become such a major part of our lives. Um, We just have to be on top of it. We need to educate what we can, try to convince people where we can. The biggest thing we have to do is get the people who are left leaning in this country to actually show up and vote the next two elections, midterms 2026, presidential 2028. Because, yeah, that was one of the biggest problems we had this last election cycle. Marcia says, I am completely lost in it. What I catch on TikTok or YouTube, very little. Yeah, I get more of my news from uh, TikTok, from podcasts, a little bit on YouTube. A couple news apps that kind of summarize everything. I try to avoid the mainstream media, all because um, they fucked us this last election. They wanted to keep it a horse race instead of fairly talking about everything, and actually reporting on Donald Trump being as bad as he was, etc. And if they would have reported on Donald Trump the way he deserved to be talked about, with as bad as he was, the outcome I think would have been different. But the media wanted the horse race. They wanted that competition. TJ says I only need 1,000. Oh, yeah, you need 1,000 followers to go live on your own or to join with video on a multi-guest show. I've seen Trumpers banking on DeSantis, Vance, Vivek, Tulsi, RFK Jr. for 2028. And I would say out of them, not a damn one has a chance of beating a Democrat, as long as, Democrats get their shit together and remember that they need to have their base covered and not just pander to disenfranchised Republicans. I think that was part of the problem with Kamala Harris. Nothing against Kamala Harris, but she spent too long at the very end running with Liz Cheney, and I think it turned a lot of left-leaning voters away. They assumed they would show up regardless, and they protested, and this is the result. JD says, mainstream media lost my trust. I turned my back on them after they turned their back on us. Yeah. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't do the mainstream media if I can avoid it. Rebecca says, at JD, us too, way better info on TikTok than mainstream media. They are owned by corporations. Yeah, that's half the problem. All they care about is their profits. And if they can keep you terrified and tuning in, instead of, reporting the facts, that's the problem. Not to mention the amount of things I've seen happen where I'm getting live reporting from TikTok and people on TikTok faster than any of the news outlets can get a story written and published and through all their channels is amazing. Like with the Baltimore Bridge collapse, when the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed, when that ship hit it, as it was going on, I was watching TikToks from people in the area reporting on it being hit and it collapsing. That was unreal. It took the mainstream media like an hour to get the story out there. Rebecca says, so many used to be decent reporters but sold out for their paychecks. Yeah, they did. It's all about the money now. And, I think if the money was right, you could see almost any of them on either side of the aisle flip their allegiance because it's just a paycheck. If they offered Tucker Carlson a big enough paycheck to come on and be a credible left-leaning pundit, he would be out there espousing the left on something like CNN or MSNBC if the money was right. I don't see a candidate they would bank on after Trump. They like Trump, not his policies. Yeah, um, th- there really isn't. There's not a candidate in the Republican Party that can capture the base like Donald Trump can. In part, and we've talked about it several times in these lives, that he talks and thinks at about a fourth to sixth grade level. He is not a smart man. And because he talks like the average person and he's not talking at them with an educated degree and using fancy words and all of this, um, that's one of the reasons they like him. Any of the other ones, none of them are going to speak to him, to the people like Donald Trump does. And he also speaks um, their language because he speaks victimhood. You know, they're victims. And suddenly, he's going to champion for them because they were victims from everything. Jules says, I love that Letitia James and Alvin Bragg are not backing down. Delayed justice is better than none. Yeah, I thought I saw something where they had a deal, or they were trying, like, they made a motion or something, an offer for a deal with Alvin Bragg. Something about some way they would enter the judgment saying, well, the jury found him guilty, but was never sentenced due to being president or something like that, and make it okay for Donald Trump to be not sentenced. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Alvin Bragg said no, not going to happen. Letitia James said we're still going to, go until we're told by a court that the penalties are off the table. We're going to keep going forward with the, squashing your appeal. This is a civil matter, not criminal. It doesn't interfere with you being president. And if we get the green light, we are going to enforce the penalties, and that could be seizing a lot of his properties, potentially including Mar-a-Lago. TJ says, Jules, Trump can't pardon himself for state crimes. No, they can't. State crimes are separate. So all he could do is get a pardon from the governor. I don't see the Democratic governor of New York giving him a pardon. Rebecca says most of his followers are third grade or below. Sure seems like it from the way they talk and parrot everything he says. Bumble says, how did Dems win down ballot but then voted for Trump in all swing states called the same night? One of the states, I think it was North Carolina, the numbers added up to where it just proved people didn't vote top of the ticket. They voted down ballot, but they did not vote for president. They protested against Kamala by just skipping that box on the ballot. I think that was part of it, is they either didn't vote for Trump, they didn't vote for Kamala, they just didn't vote. They voted down ballot and made sure that the down ballot races were ahead for Democrats, at least some of them, but they just didn't turn out. And I think things like the Seltzer poll here in Iowa, which showed Kamala Harris winning by 3%, I think that last minute push scared a lot of Republican voters who thought going in Trump had it in the bag and they may not have voted. I think it scared some of them out to vote as well. Dems need a charismatic candidate for 2028. And JD says Dem needs an aggressive candidate that resembles FDR in terms of policy. I'd love to see that. Both those comments are similar. And I've been saying that if Donald Trump tanks the economy as bad as it could be, we could be looking at something similar to the 1929 stock market crash, Great Depression. And the Democrats would need to run on a New Deal style message. And Andy Beshear, the Democratic governor of Kentucky, has said they need to run a candidate that's talking about jobs, talking about healthcare, talking about wages, talking about taxes, talking about the economy, those kind of things. Now, whether that message would land coming from Andy Beshear because he is a billionaire, I don't know. But he is saying that those are the issues you need to run on. Now, I hope the Democrats listen to him because he's gaining some momentum in the Democratic Party. Hopefully, they listen to him. And that's the type of candidate they run in 2028. Problem would be, depending on who the candidate is, they would have to, hope that it doesn't change their message too much. For example, I don't know if they could run that kind of a candidate if they chose to back Kamala Harris again. I don't know if that would work. So Dems think we are fine with Trump as long as down ballot is good. What a joke. Well, that's the thing. Some of them were protesting how Kamala Harris became the nominee. Some of them were protesting the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. Well, for those that were protesting Gaza, congratulations. You're giving Netanyahu the green light to turn Gaza into a parking lot. Some of them were protesting Joe Biden. Some were protesting the economy. It was ridiculous. You vote for the person, that is going to help you the best. And this protest politics doesn't work. But they did the same thing in 2016. They voted for Trump because some of them voted for Trump because they were mad about how Bernie was treated in the 2016 primary. And that led to us getting Donald Trump. And they never learned their lesson. Rebecca says, Walmart CEO already making statement he doesn't think prices are going to come down at all. No, he's not. Or no, he said that, but no, they're not. Why? Because the person that would have put regulations in to prevent them from gouging and raising prices, and also was not running on a tariff which is going to raise prices, policies, was Kamala Harris. So there's going to be no oversight into the private market. Donald Trump's going to let them raise prices to whatever percentages they want. He's not going to do anything to force them to lower prices. And he's going to put tariffs on which are going to raise prices. So why would they come down? Jewel, let's see. Dems need to give up on nominating women. Most men are too afraid. I think that's part of it. I think they need to. I think and there may even be a woman who ends up being the front runner in 2028. I think, though, Kamala Harris would have been she might have had a better chance if she wouldn't have gotten the nomination in July of an election year, if she would have been able to go through the primary process and actually win the primary, even though I don't think anybody would have primaried against her. The simple fact that they held the primaries and she would have won, I think would have made a difference for at least some people. Let's see. Jewel says, the thing is with midterms is that we are fighting against Olonia's money and funding candidates. We are, but if the economy crashes and we keep the messaging up and we're putting the blame right where it belongs, as people are feeling that hurt, some of them, at least, are going to get the message. And typically in the midterms, the party that is in control of the White House loses seats in the midterms. Generally. It happens more often than not. Rebecca says Walmart is the standard of low pricing, speaks volumes. Yeah. Um, them saying they're not going to lower prices speaks loud and clear as to what's probably going to happen. Sunset says when prices go up, Trump will just blame Biden. MAGA will eat it up too. They can he can try, but that's where people like me and other creators on apps like this need to come out and put the blame squarely where it belongs at the feet of Republicans because they have the presidency, they have the House, they have the Senate. They can pass anything they need to pass to do something. And if the economy keeps tanking, but it was good under Biden, well, we need to point out that and lay the blame at Donald Trump's feet, even if it falls on deaf ears. Rebecca says, even if she had been in the spotlight more as VP. Yeah, if she would have been spotlighted more, I thought they were going to do that. I think they should have done that from the get go. Um, and, you know, they should have spotlighted her from the uh, basically the day Joe Biden was inaugurated, because he had said then that he was only going to be a one-term president, and there were already questions about him being 78 years old. Um, and about his health. Is he going to make it? Um, so they should have been highlighting Kamala Harris and showcasing her more from day one of the Biden administration to give people comfort that should something have happened to Joe Biden, she could step in and do that role. And then when this happened, where he got pushed out of the race by Democrats and Democratic leadership, uh, people would have been more comfortable having her in as the nominee. Sunset says, I agree. As you said, though, it will fall on deaf ears. Trump is never wrong in their eyes. Yeah. Um, the thing about it falling on deaf ears, though, when they're looking around going, what the fuck? Why is this? Uh, why are things the way they are? And it's hurting me. There is a chance that they may actually pick up some, at least look for other options and start taking in other information and look around and go, oh fuck, maybe we were wrong. There's a chance. If anything, they learn that was because that was the whole thing. Joe Biden takes office, and while he's in office, prices go up because of Donald Trump's mishandling of the pandemic, global supply chain issues. It was a global inflationary problem. But Joe Biden got the blame because they looked around and went, what the fuck? We got to blame somebody. Well, and they were listening to the same media, and it was saying, well, it's the other guy. They believed it. So what's going to happen when everything goes up this time? Well, their media is not going to put the blame on Donald Trump, or if it does, it'll be very, very lightly. But they're going to be looking out, and hopefully they put the blame at Donald Trump's feet, and we just have to be loud enough that hopefully they hear it. JD says Dems can also tap into the party of non-voters, especially if the economy tanks. Yeah, I mean, generally only about a third of Americans ever vote out of the ones that are eligible, a third to half. Because you got a big chunk of voters that swear it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who gets in. Everything will be fine. Everything's going to be shit. Whatever their viewpoint is, nothing's going to change no matter who's in office. Marsha says, I'm too old to care, but I will never vote Republican in my life. Um, I would say for me, I have voted Republican, I have voted Democrat, I have voted Independent. I have never once regretted a Democratic vote. In their current iteration, I will never vote Republican. Now, if they somehow break down, rebuild, and come back strong with a completely different viewpoint, and they have people who have ideas, I'll listen at that point. But it's going to take them completely, really rebuilding and rebranding in order to do that. I don't know who that is. Okay. Jake comes in, says Trump 2024, and TJ got him, said Jake got snaked. Yeah, they don't add much to the conversation. They come in and say stuff like Trump 2024 like it's doing something. I think they're pissed that we're not actually crying. We're talking, we're having rational discussions, we're planning, we're strategizing. But we're not angry. We're not doing the same things they were doing after 2020, and I think that's part of it. They're pissed that we're not acting like them. Jules says, you and me both, solely based on taking away women's rights. Yeah, I thought that would be a bigger issue when it came to this election. That it was going to be, the overturning of Roe, and Donald Trump taking credit for it was going to be the one thing that completely sealed him in and did him in as far as the election. And I'm surprised it wasn't. But then again, you have places like Missouri that go out and they pass their constitutional amendment with like 53, 54% to protect a woman's right to an abortion in their state constitution, and then vote for the guy who caused them to need the amendment in their constitution. It's ridiculous. Scott says, well, you never got to vote for Kamala in the primary, so there's that. And TJ already kicked him. But thing is, I voted in the Iowa didn't actually have a Democratic primary that I'm aware of. If they did for president, it was ahead of the it was before the official one, and it didn't count. But if I would have voted for Joe Biden in the primary, it would have always been with the understanding that at some point Kamala Harris could have taken over and had to either finish the race, finish his term, or whatever. So I was perfectly fine with that. Ms. Singleton said, did you watch The View today? No, I didn't. What about? Colleen says electoral December 11th, 2024. Was today the day they had to certify all the states? I hadn't heard that there was any sort of issues. So if today was the day, then I haven't heard that anything changed, and I believe Donald Trump is still president-elect. JD said they don't know how to deal with us anymore. We don't give them the reaction they want. Yeah, and that's how we have to keep them confused and pissed. Marcia says, mine isn't the fact about women's rights, it's because most are connected to Trump. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of Republicans for a while that are going to be connected to Trump, and they're going to have to wear that stink for a long time. Certification for electoral was today. Yet I hadn't heard of any issues. So, as far as I know, Donald Trump is the president-elect. Um, Bill Clinton was on there. You should have heard what they talked about. I haven't seen that, but uh, Clinton was great. Hybrid Hybrid Girl says exactly that's what vice president means. Yeah. Um, that was why I said ahead of it that Joe Biden should have finished the race. But if he didn't and he had to step aside when everyone was against him and pushing him out of the race, I said there's only one logical person and that is Kamala Harris because she's the next in line. If the outcome would have been that Joe Biden had died and not just stepped aside but died, she would have been the one to become president and she would have finished the race that way. She should have been the next choice. It was the best option. Um, Miss Singleton said he had a lot to say. I'll have to see if I can find either some clips or an article talking about it because I'm sure there was a lot there. Sunset said Kamala will never get credit for it, but she has been way more mature and gracious than Trump was. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Way more. Way more of gracious than Trump was. Trump was calling it was rigged and stolen well ahead of the election, trying to rile up uh, everybody ahead. Prior to Kamala being the nominee, all of us should have been voting, knowing that knowing our VP. Yeah, they should have done more to showcase her from day one of the Biden administration. Had her more involved, make her front and center, because, like I said a little bit ago in the live, there were questions in 2020 when Joe Biden was 78 about his health then, based just on his age. They should have been showcasing her that way. If something would have happened, there would have been confidence in her going forward. Now, that's what the Republicans should also do for J.D. Vance. But because Donald Trump doesn't want anyone to take his spotlight, you're not going to see hide nor hair at J.D. Vance until Donald Trump needs him for something or something happens to Donald Trump. Sad part is Trump is old enough to be her dad. He should be more mature than her. Yeah. Hustling Globe Bernie. What about Bernie? Uh, the guy can't help but lie. It was rigged, but he won. So now suddenly it's not rigged. Yeah, that's how Trump acts. He was saying way back in 2016, ahead of the Iowa caucus, that it was going to be rigged against him. Then he lost to, I believe it was Ted Cruz, and um, he said it was rigged. Then all of a sudden he started winning primaries and gaining support. And next thing you know, he's the nominee. And then suddenly nothing was rigged against him. That's just how he is. He was setting up an excuse for when he lost and a way to try to challenge it. And just ridiculous. Rebecca says, I've been saying that for 4 years. Who was Kamala Harris? Anyone in the Gen Pop had no real idea. Yeah, because they should have been showcasing her. And typically, you don't think about the VP. I'll be honest, I didn't think too much of Joe Biden as VP under Obama. Didn't think twice about him. Until they were out of office and all the memes about Joe Biden started to pop up, making fun of Joe Biden, sure, about the things he was trying to do about like stopping Trump from trying to come into the White House and things like that. But I didn't think twice about Joe Biden, really, and that's the problem with the VP spot. You don't think about them. And Republicans. And now I realize there's no Republicans alive long enough to know this, and if they'd study their history, they would know it. But Republicans and study and think, they don't go hand in hand. Republicans used to like to put uh, politicians they saw as issues as VP. You know, you had Teddy Roosevelt who was gaining some notoriety, and then what do they do with him? Well, they stick him on as the VP to McKinley, and they thought, okay, well, we'll hide him in the VP spot, and he'll fall out of the public eye, no big deal. McKinley gets shot. Next thing you know, he's president. Well, that backfired on him, didn't it? And we can't hide away the VP. We can't treat it like some kind of a forgotten position, especially when you're dealing with either an older president or a term limited president. You need to be showcasing your VP from the get go, or at least from once you know for sure they want to run for their own term, because that's how you get their name out there. You know, Donald Trump will be term limited here in 2028. He is not going to be putting any sort of good press forward for J.D. Vance. Now, Democrats need to take it full advantage and use the "who's J.D. Vance" idea against them, kind of like they did with Kamala Harris. Uh, Marcia said he messed up by telling people to go to the polls and not mail your vote in the middle of COVID. Yeah, that was part of it, because for whatever reason, he wanted in-person voting. He voted by mail, but he wanted in-person voting. I think he liked the idea of seeing long lines of crowds of people on the TV out there voting for him as a sign of support. Rebecca says it's all about the press of a person in power. It is. And that's why the person in power needs to showcase and put better press on their VP in situations where it's called for, because the press otherwise won't do it on their own. It wasn't. Hustlin says it wasn't so much people voting for Trump. I think they voted against the Dem establishment. I think that was part of it, or they didn't. Or they just didn't vote for the presidential race as a protest against the Democratic establishment. Colin says, I disagree. Nobody knew who Obama was and he won. Yeah, but Obama also was very charismatic, a good public speaker, and we were coming off the heels. We were right in the middle of the beginning of the 2008 housing crisis, coming off of 8 years of George W. Bush. And I think John McCain at some point in his life would have been a great president, but he came out and his platform sounded a lot like more of the same, and the last 8 years were really shitty. In 2008, I think that springboarded him a little bit. Marcia asks, is JD better than Trump? Now, TJ says JD is better for Republicans because they can control him. To an extent, the other thing is, he's not just Republicans. You can talk to JD Vance. He's a little more intelligent. You can explain things to him, and he doesn't make snap judgments and assume because he made the decision that it's the smartest thing in the world. JD Vance is better that way. Charlie said, did Trump actually vote this time? High school civics told me felons can't vote. Yes, he did. He was able to vote in Florida, and here's why. He was convicted in New York on state crimes, 34 felonies, but New York State has a law that says you only lose your voting rights while you are detained, while you are in prison. And Florida has a law that says if you are charged of state crimes, state felonies in other states, you only lose your voting rights if that state has taken it away. Well, because Donald Trump is not in prison, he had his voting rights as far as the state of New York was concerned. Therefore, he had his voting rights as far as the state of Florida was concerned. Very convoluted, but That's why he was able to vote. Rebecca says at Hustle and Glow, they voted for the price of eggs versus people's rights. That's part of it. I believe VPs aren't picked to be better than the president, so they would think twice of removing. Yeah, that's part of it. Usually, though, a lot of the VPs are picked because they give you something. Mike Pence was picked in part. There was a lot of Republicans that pushed for Pence, in part because he knew how government worked. He brought some stability to the ticket, some credibility. Joe Biden was picked for Obama, in part because Obama had only been in the Senate for 2 years. And Joe Biden knew how the politics game was played. He made deep friendships. Joe Biden was picked to be the guy to go to Capitol Hill and say, okay, let's get to work. I'm going to work with Republicans. We're going to get this thing passed. We're going to do it bipartisan. And let's start the horse trade. We know how this game is played. I want you to vote for this. What do you need in here to vote for it? And that's kind of what they did. Marcia says, I never listened to JD much, but the bad things about Harris. Yeah, they they didn't. The media didn't cover the bad things about JD nearly as well as they should have. But again, they didn't cover nearly enough about the bad things of Donald Trump either. Hustlin says the right to vote should be available to all citizens, felon or not. There are a lot of people that think that. I haven't decided which way I feel on that. Detected inactivity. Oh, here's that stupid puzzle piece Mike likes to talk about. I'm sitting here scrolling my screen and moving the chat and talking to you. Yeah, how am I inactive? But whatever. Yeah, I haven't decided which way I feel on the whole felons getting their voting rights back. I know a lot of states have ways felons can get them back. Sometimes they get it back immediately once they're out. That's definitely a conversation that's worth having. Trump is the hero against the Red Scare, according to the Republicans. Yeah, they've been playing that Red Scare up since, who was it? In the 60s. I can't think of his name now. It'll come to me in a minute. But they had they were doing the Red Scare investigations. It'll come to me. Trump is a very special man-child. He is. Let's see. Rebecca says, I think JD is laying low by orders. The powers need him to not be embarrassing right now. They need him to not be embarrassing, and they also need him to not bring up anything. I think he's partially laying low because they're probably strategizing some backdoor stuff for what to do if they need a 25th Amendment, if they need to impeach and remove, all kinds of things for how bad it is. Where they're in public praising Trump, but I think they could, I think they're setting up for what they may have to do on the backside of things. Tim Walz was okay, but I like Joe Biden more. Yeah. Joe Biden was a great VP. Miss Singleton says, Bill seems kind of iffy about the election. Why would he think that? I don't know. I know former presidents get access to a lot more They get daily briefings or weekly briefings or whatever. They still are read into national security clearance stuff. Maybe there's something he knows about that we don't know. I don't know. And maybe he's just maybe it's disappointment in how it turned out. Hustlin says the right to vote in a democratic society should be an inalienable right. That's true. Because the right to vote is a core thing. If we don't vote for the people to represent us, we don't truly have our democracy. I like to say if you don't vote, you can't bitch. That's the way I view it. TJ says, I have no problem with felons getting their voting rights back after they paid their debt. Yeah, that seems to be the common consensus is that if they do restore it, it should be after they're out of prison. And I could see where that would work. Rebecca says, do you mean McCarthy? Yes, that was the name I was thinking of. The McCarthy hearings in the 60s. Rebecca says exactly what I meant. JD will be president before the end of this term. Very well could be. Whether it's Donald Trump's daily Big Mac obsession, whether it's the 25th Amendment, or impeachment. I think any one of those is possible. I just don't think Donald Trump makes it to the end of his term, one way or another. JD said, I can't wait to see what the base does if Republicans impeach or remove Trump. Oh, they're going to lose their minds. They are going to lose their minds. And the thing is, depending on what happens, if they impeach or 25th Amendment Donald Trump and JD doesn't, like if JD's involved in removing him, JD Vance could kiss a second term out, because just like Mike Pence, a big chunk of the Republican Party will never vote for him. Miss Singleton said, yes, that's exactly what he said about the briefings and stuff. That's interesting. I might have to look for that and see if I can discern anything out of it. Let's go Shady FJD. I mean, we can start saying those things all day long, like they did for Joe Biden. Let's see. We need to place Trump Vance I did that stickers. Yes. I've seen some people saying we need to do that. And we just need to put the blame on them. Because it worked this time. Ms. Singleton says he even said not the president. They still are somehow tied to the information. Yeah. They get briefings. Now they can opt whether to take them or not. I even think Jimmy Carter, if he requested one, would be allowed to see national security briefings that all of the other presidents get. Except Donald Trump. Joe Biden had, at least up until he won re-election, had been preventing Donald Trump from getting those briefings because of how he treated classified documents and everything. Joe Biden said you don't need to see them. Mike says got to get rid of the Electoral College. Yeah, if we go to a straight popular vote, that would be pretty good. Democrats would rarely lose. Republicans would have, well, no idea how 2004 would have gone because Gore would have won in 2000. So that was one of the two popular votes that they won for in the last 20 years. The other was this election. But who knows if I don't think Donald Trump would have been a factor in 2024 if Hillary would have won just by popular vote in 2016. So that could happen, but it would take a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Electoral College. And right now, neither party has the votes in Congress to make it happen. So we'll see. Now, Donald Trump has said something about wanting to get rid of the Electoral College and keep it on the popular vote, but what he said didn't make a lot of sense, because he said Democrats want to get rid of the popular vote and only have the Electoral College. Well, that's all we have. The popular vote is just a side fact that they report on. It doesn't matter. You could win the popular vote by 60%. At 60%, if you didn't win enough states to win the Electoral College, you didn't win enough states to win the Electoral College. Doesn't matter. Mully says Rachel on MSNBC talked about how Trump told his people not to vote because he had enough votes. Yeah, that was weird. I think he was just speaking up from a look at how strong I am, beating his chest kind of thing. It wasn't as much about he actually had something up his sleeve. I don't think he can strategize that well. User says that would be awesome. If the Republicans want to save their party, he needs to go. Ultimately, it is going to come down to, assuming Donald Trump gets inaugurated, because I haven't heard anything that's going to change that. Assuming he becomes president, it's going to come down to, has he hurt the Republican brand enough that Republicans in Congress are afraid that by keeping him in the office, it's either going to cost him in the midterms in 2026 or the presidential election in 28, and they may have to make a hard choice to cut him loose, because it could be a situation where they're worried about a Democratic president in 2028 and a supermajority in both chambers for the Democrats by leaving him in. And if they're worried, that's always a good thing. Rebecca said there's a chance Trump does nothing and rides it out. Not probable, but he's a loose cannon. Yeah, he is. JD says, hilarious that DJT thinks Dems want the popular vote gone. We've been saying the exact opposite. He's only saying that, I think, because he won the popular vote this time. I think that's the only reason. Apple user says Musk could. Musk could what? Both Gore and Hillary would not have had the chambers in 2016. Oh, in 2016. Are you saying they wouldn't have had Congress? Maybe not, but they would have had the presidency. And that would have changed how everything happened. Even with Republicans fighting against them, in 2000, Republicans weren't nearly as obstructionist as they are now. And then everything going forward would have changed. We don't even know if Hillary would have been president or in the running in 2016. But if everything stayed the same in 2016 is when they changed it to popular only. Even without Congress in 2016, Donald Trump's not in, and things are handled way differently. It changes a lot of things. TJ says Republicans want to get rid of him. We're talking about Trump, yeah. Apple user says could help steal vote. About Musk. Yeah, I've been hearing that theory. I haven't seen anything that's proof. But if somebody's got proof, like legitimate proof, and something ends up happening, I'll be glad to talk about it. I'll scream it on every video. And if somehow Donald Trump does not end up president, that would be amazing. Everything I'm seeing right now is showing that it looks like Donald Trump will be the president-elect. Uh, Rebecca says to TJ, yes, because they want to keep their jobs in 2028. Talking about Congress, um, and them potentially ousting Trump. Yeah, if I've been saying it in a lot of my lives and a lot of my videos, that politicians love their own power above and beyond everything. And if Trump is a big enough liability to their own power, they will cut him loose and do whatever they have to. They'll go with J.D. Vance or whatever they need to do if they're afraid that they're going to lose their seats and their paychecks, their pensions, and all of it. Robert says, dude isn't dealing with the reality that we're in the seventh political system. I have no idea what you mean by that. Creative Gal says, didn't Starlink provide satellite internet for polling machines? I heard that they did for some places, but not every place. And haven't seen anything about that. I heard it wasn't the voting machine specifically. It was the devices that were connected to send the counts. Apple user says, do you think any of his cabinet picks will get confirmed? Yeah, I think some of them will. Pam Bondi may get confirmed. His one pick for Treasury may get confirmed. I don't think Hegseth gets through. Maybe whoever he picks for Department of Defense after Hegseth may get in. I don't think Linda McMahon makes it. I don't think RFK makes it. I don't think Hegseth, I doubt. There's so many bad picks. Like, I heard he appointed Kimberly Guilfoyle. Now, I've heard she may or may not be, is it Don Jr.'s girlfriend, maybe ex-girlfriend, not sure there. Apparently he appointed her to some ambassadorship. And I don't even know if she makes it. Like, there's a lot of questions about a lot of his picks, and the Senate Republicans, they don't need Trump as much as he needs them. So they're going to be pushing back, and they're already saying as much. Tulsi Gabbard, that was another one I don't think makes it. Nikki says, I think Biden, Harris know there were lots of dishonesty, but don't have enough power to do anything. Could be. That could be part of it. Let's see. Imagine this MAGA nightmare being over. What a dream. Yeah, this will probably be the last push for MAGA. When Donald Trump's out of power, the MAGA movement dies. JD says Tulsi is toast since the Assad regime collapsed. And TJ says, no, she's not. She got Putin. Yeah, but either way, I don't think she makes it through the Senate. I think they block her. When she was flagged by Department of Homeland Security as a potential security risk, how the hell do they grant her security clearance to be head of national intelligence? Doesn't make sense. I just don't think she makes it. Marcia says, they said Don Jr. fiance, he broke up with her, got a new girlfriend. Yeah, I heard that. Apple user asks, do you think Trump will last 4 years? No. We've been talking about it earlier. I think it's either going to be one of three things. Either his daily Big Mac obsession and his poor health, physically and mentally, is going to get him, and he just won't live through the 4 years. Entirely possible. He's also 78 years old. He's getting into the age where anything can happen, even with the best health care. But if he gets so far unhinged and so far out of pocket, there is two other options. If his dementia kicks in bad enough to the point where JD's like, this dude's nuts and he's going to cause damage to the Republican Party, cause damage to the country, and this is just, we have to stop it. He could use the 25th Amendment and remove Trump. Or if Donald Trump does things that are just that egregious and crashes the economy, things like that, Republicans may be left with no choice. If they want to get reelected, they may have to impeach and remove Trump and stick in J.D. Vance as president, just because there's no other choice. TJ said, reread what I said. He wasn't saying she'd make it, saying she's got connections. Talking about connections to Putin for Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, she does. And that's, I think there's just too much against her. I just don't think she gets through. There's a lot of his candidate picks that are just not going to get through the cabinet, because Congress doesn't need Donald Trump as much as he needs them, and they can start pushing back. They're still kind of hedging their bets a little bit in the media and stuff right now until he is inaugurated. But then once he's inaugurated, there's nothing more they can do. In fact, I think they're just trying to get him through to Inauguration Day. And then they're just going to hope to control him after that point, because they don't need him. Once he's sworn in, he won't be able to do much after that, because they don't need him. JD says, I don't see Vance using the 25th against Trump. I think he's too much of a sycophant to him. You're probably right about him being a sycophant, except that he'll listen to the powers that be in the Republican Party. If the powers that be in the Republican Party, people like your Mitch McConnells, your John Thunes, if they start putting some pressure on him, he'd probably back down and start listening. Nikki says, I think the tech bros and Heritage are the nefarious outliers. They're the real ones in power. Yeah, some people have said that the tech bros and Heritage were the ones pushing for J.D. Vance. Maybe. Joel says maybe they should go after inbreeding. That seems to be an issue in the Republican Party. Yeah. Rebecca says to Nikki, for sure, that's why they want Vance. Yeah, they want Vance, the tech bros and Heritage, because Vance is more easily controlled than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a wild card. Give it 6 to 12 months and something will happen to Trump? Possibly. One way or another. Mike, the Rational Boomer, was on his podcast last night reading an email, and he was asked the over-under for Donald Trump making it a full year. It's well within the realm of possibility. We're talking about a guy who's not in the best of health and everything else. So you never know. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I've been going about an hour and a half. It was a great live. Once again, I want to shout out to TJ, our great moderator. Didn't accidentally invite you this time, but had another good conversation. Doing a great job. Like I said, going to start wrapping this up. Don't know how often I'm going to keep doing these. I feels like I'm doing them every day, but I don't really have a set plan or a set schedule. So I appreciate you guys joining me and having such a good conversation. For those of you that joined late or want to catch the whole thing, I do record it. It will be up over on my YouTube page. I am Analytical Iowan on YouTube as well. Link is in my bio if you want to go that route, or just look for Analytical Iowan, all one word, on YouTube. TJ says, ask Mike to have us on more lives. Yeah, asking Mike, the Rational Boomer, to have us more on multi-person shows, because that was fun the other night. So, like I said, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you for all joining me and having such a good conversation. Once again, thank you to TJ for keeping the chat safe, and keeping all of the Trump humpers out so we, don't get reported and taken down. And for those of you that missed part of it or want to catch it all, it is up over on my YouTube page. So thanks again, and I will catch you next time I go live. All right. Gonna wrap up there. That was a great live. Had another good night. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you the next time I go live.